Hello, my name is Jason Kim, senior at Swarthmore College. Today I'll be discussing how we used statistics to estimate the North Atlantic right whale population size. So the big picture of our presentation today, firstly, I'll be talking about the data set and how we transformed it into the context within the context of our problem. Secondly, our methodology and general approach. Thirdly, our model with some new variables. And lastly, our results. So the data set that we use is from NAWRC. It's a sighting level data set where each entry is information about each sighting. So it had over 70,000 sightings. So our job was to transform this to whale level so that each entry has information about individual distinct whales. So we transformed it so that we have information about 724 distinct whales, which fit better for our problem because we wanted to calculate the probability of being alive for individual whales. So our methodology can be summarized into three big steps. Firstly, we calculate the initial probability of being alive for each individual whale using a solo technology, which is based on the sighting records only. So for example, a whale that was last seen last year will have a higher probability of being alive than a whale that was seen 10 years ago, lastly. Secondly, we adjust those probabilities with our model to account for covariates such as age, sex, whether or not a whale was hit by a vessel. So it provides some context into those initial probability of being alive. And lastly, we want to account for unseen whales using breakaway because in the first two steps, we're only dealing with whales that have been seen and recorded in the data sets. So we're assuming that we have not been able to see all the whales and based on how we, look for whales. And that's the assumption under the last step. So like I said, we use solo to generate initial probability of being alive for individual whales, only given their sighting records. So we come up with those numbers for individual, all 724 whales. And once we add them all up, we get 376. And like I said, you can see on the right, whales that were last seen more recently have higher probabilities than those that were seen a long time ago. And this is the model that helps us adjust those initial probabilities that provide some context using this covariates. So on the left side, you can see these variables that are our indicator variables, whether that tells us whether or not a whale is adult, is it a female, was it ever fed, was it ever seen with a calf, was it ever entangled, was it ever disentangled. And this year we use these two new variables, strike ever and deep strike. Strike ever being meaning whether was this whale ever struck by a vessel, and deep strike telling us was that strike a deep one, because there are three categories for strikes, being deep, superficial, and shallow. And you can kind of see how deep strike has a negative impact, kind of seeing the negative 2.08 coefficient. So this is the model that we used in order to adjust the initial probabilities. So once we adjusted those numbers, we got a slightly higher number than our initial number of 376. When we summed them all up, we got 387, denoted as P solo adjusted here. So you can kind of see how our model affected each covariates as well for these individual whales. So for whales that have been seen with the calf, after we adjusted it with our model, had a much higher probability of being alive, denoted by these green data points here. And whales that were seen without a calf were affected negatively, or their probabilities went down after our model adjusted those numbers. So you can kind of see these trends and how it affected these different whales, which we thought was interesting to note. And also regarding entangled, you can kind of see how the whales that have been seen entangled when they were last seen were adjusted well below than what we initially predicted with P solo, which makes sense because being entangled kind of leaves scars for whales, and then it makes them hard to, stay alive than the whales that have never been entangled. And it shows in this graph. So we thought it was interesting to note again, because we were able to assess how being entangled affects one's probability of being alive. And then we simulate based on wanting to account for the whales that we have not been able to see, and those numbers lie between 380 and 395. And these are the results from last year's conference. And then we can kind of see that our number kind of aligns with the M&A and PACE model predictions. And it kind of shows the context of where our number is.